You unlock this door with the key of imagination. Beyond it is another dimension. A dimension of sound. A dimension of sight. A dimension of mind. You're moving into a land of both shadow and substance, of things and ideas. You've just crossed over into the Twilight Zone.
Alright folks, what is up? What is up? And welcome into another episode of America's Hometown Horror. Thanks for tuning in to another episode as we continue into JANthology, baby. And we are back with another shorter episode today on another anthology movie, another well-known anthology movie. Hope you guys enjoyed the episode last week on Southbound. And things might be a little bit quieter this episode because we are sans Catherine, but I am joined by my other esteemed co-host, Andrew. What's up, dude?
Not much, just, making it through the winter, watching movies, and just trying to will spring to come faster.
I know, it's so funny. I was talking to my neighbor, George, about this the other day, but it's just like, at least this month, you know, I feel like on top of the fact that we're all doing Sober January, at least we have football to look forward to this month, and at least the Patriots are in the playoffs this year, at least until Saturday. We'll see what happens on Saturday. But then you think about the fact that we still have the entire month of February that has, like, nothing going on.
There's a minimum,
the Super Bowl.
Minimum of, like, 6 weeks where it seems to be.
Yeah.
Wanting to rip our eyes out.
Yeah, Super Bowl, and then, I mean, maybe a couple movie releases to look forward to, and then, I guess, Valentine's Day. Great.
Oh,
great.
Cool, my favorite.
Very cool, very cool. But yeah, so what's been going on since the last time we recorded? You been up to anything good? Watch anything good? I know you're a big fan of watching late-night movies after work that are crazy, ridiculous horror movies. Anything of note to report?
What did I watch? I watched The Undertaker with Joe Spinelli.
Okay.
Some weird movie where he plays an Undertaker and he has like these, I don't know, it's just, he keeps like these women down in his morgue.
His mortuary.
His mortuary. It's just one of those weird like Joe Spinelli type movies where he's just a maniac. And
nice.
It's there's not really much to say about it. It's pretty much just a gory
B-horror movie.
B-horror movie.
Nice.
Worth watching.
Where'd you find that one?
Amazon
Prime?
Amazon has the weirdest movies.
Amazon Prime and Shudder, you know, combined with that, does have like the deepest cut.
So maybe it was a Shudder movie because when I'm on my Amazon Prime, it just says what's next for you, and I never really notice if it's on Shudder or if it's on Amazon. So maybe it's Shudder. That seems like a Shudder movie, but
nice. Well, speaking of Shudder, I did actually have a chance to finish the other day. I know we had talked about it previously, but that Shudder series Behind the Monsters.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I finished, I had 2 episodes left. I finished it. I watched the last 2, which were on Jason Voorhees, and the final one, which you absolutely need to watch, is on Pinhead and Hellraiser.
Oh, nice.
They're both very good. It's the type of thing, if, you know, I really like the deep dive, like documentary, like horror history look into things, and this series is very good with that. There's a lot of interesting talking heads on all of these episodes that kind of share some good insight. You know, people that made the movies, you know, some people that are horror writers, horror movie makers, and obviously with the Hellraiser one we talked about a couple episodes ago, they're doing a new Hellraiser movie that's coming out this year, directed by David Bruckner, who directed a segment of Southbound, which we covered last week. He also did The Ritual.
Yep.
What was that Netflix movie that we watched, Nobody Gets Out Alive?
Yeah.
He did that one. So he's directing the new Hellraiser, and he actually is, you know, commenting throughout that entire episode. So I think he has a good grasp on the franchise. You know, easy to see that he has a lot of love for it. So I think that's in good hands. Also, I don't know how you feel about this, but I think it's out there in the news, but he said it on the show that they apparently they gender swapped Pinhead for this new reboot sequel.
Oh, really?
So Pinhead's going to be a female.
Huh.
Which is an interesting choice.
I mean, I don't think it really matters.
No.
Because Pinhead isn't really a gender.
That's what I thought. I always thought of like all the Cenobites as like genderless.
Yeah.
You know, so I guess it doesn't really matter.
I mean, it's definitely played by a guy in the movie.
Oh, yeah, of course.
But I mean, you could easily swap them out for a woman.
Doug Bradley, I believe, is the guy's name that's played Pinhead.
Then you sent me
famously.
that article where they thought about doing the mashup with.
Oh my God, I know.
Why did
So I don't know, but that would have been pretty cool.
They could probably still do that now.
Yeah. So the article I sent Andrew was actually when I was watching the show a few years back. They tossed around the idea right after they did the Freddy versus Jason movie. They tossed out the idea of doing a Michael Myers versus Pinhead movie, which would have been fucking wild. And it would have involved like the events of Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. So that would have been really, really cool. Because I know
there's still time.
You and I are both pretty big fans of Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. But anyway, yeah, so welcome back into JANthology. One more thing to note before we jump into tonight's movie. I was talking to our buddy Andy of the Inebriart podcast, and of course we are a part of the Inebriart podcast network. He had the opportunity to be on a podcast called The School of Podcasting, which is that's a pretty big deal. So congrats to Andy on that. He kind of just was talking about his history as a podcaster and some of the things that he's done. They did actually, or Andy did talk about the 2-part episode that we did down at the old jail down in Cape Cod. Yep. So we got a nice little shout out on the most recent episode of the School of Podcasting.
Thanks, Andy.
Yeah, it's actually right in the first 5 minutes of the show. So if you want to go on and hear that shout out that we got, you can listen to the rest of the episode or not. Doesn't really matter to us, but it's a show that's about kind of like the art of podcasting and different tips to try and make yourself a better podcaster. So if you are a podcaster, I would definitely say check that show out. So, with that being said, ready to jump into the Twilight Zone, the movie?
Yeah.
So, we're going to be kind of going off the cuff on this one, which is a little bit different than what we usually do because fucking Verizon, my internet has been down periodically over the last week, and I've had to make several calls to Verizon. So, before we recorded this, I haven't had as much chance to do as much research as I usually do, which is, I think this should be a nice, refreshing change.
Didn't want to hit up the library?
I didn't want to hit up the library. I had too much else going on. But I guess, kind of to start, Twilight Zone, the movie, obviously it's a movie, but it's based on the famous show that was created by Rod Serling, the black and white sci-fi classic television show, probably one of the greatest television shows ever created. I know the Twilight Zone, the show, the whole franchise as a whole has a special place in my heart. I mean, I could go on and on and on about the Twilight Zone, but what about you? Are you a fan of the Twilight Zone, the original series, the overall franchise? What do you think?
Oh, I love the Twilight Zone, the original series. Like, we used to watch that all the time when I was younger. My dad would put it on for New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
And we'd watch that. And between that and the Stooges, I always like the Twilight Zone better. I mean, the Stooges is good, but... and then, you went through the period of time where you would go out for New Year's, and then now it's like, I don't really care about New Year's anymore.
Yeah.
So then you watch it again, but...
Yep.
Yeah, I feel like the show's a classic. You can't beat it. And the ride down in Disney, the Twilight Zone Tower.
Oh, my God.
You can't beat that
if
ride.
you look over your shoulder, obviously I have a little poster of the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror right here in the podcast studio. That is my favorite ride of all time.
Yeah. And it's essentially just like one of those, whatever they are, the elevator rides.
Tower rides.
But it's so much better because of the theme of it.
Theme to the Twilight Zone, and it's like, haunted hotel. It's actually, I'm amazed that they put something like that at Walt Disney World and at Disneyland because it seems so far outside of the realm of what they do. They don't really do anything scary. And it's not a scary ride. It's just, it's just a love letter to the Twilight Zone. But I guess if Disney was going to do something spooky, this would probably be something that would just tailor-made for them because it doesn't have any gore, doesn't have any swearing or sex or anything like that. So it's kind of just spooky stories, sci-fi stories, and it kind of... it's an outlier, but I mean, the ride is fantastic. The last time I went to Disney World, which was probably, 15 years ago at this point, maybe even longer than that. I think I remember I think I went on that ride about 7 times in a row because I was there at night and there was no line for it. So I just kept getting off, getting back on, getting off, getting back on. It's such a fun ride, and I hope it never goes away. I know that they rethemed the one in California for Marvel, so I'm hoping they never do that at the one in Florida. Cause
pretty soon everything's going to be rethemed.
Everything's going to be Marvel or Star Wars there, so, whatever. I digress. But yeah, I'm a huge fan of the original show, even to the point where there's been several rebooted versions of the show at this point. There was one in the 80s. There was one in the early 2000s, which was terrible. I remember they got Jonathan Davis from Korn to do a revamped version of the Twilight Zone theme. Not good.
I don't remember that at all.
And then obviously the most recent version is the one that was executive produced and hosted by Jordan Peele, which I actually surprisingly was not a fan of. I watched the first season. It was okay. Jordan Peele's very good as the host, but I didn't feel like the episodes were very good. I didn't see season 2. They were on CBS All Access before that got dissolved, and now I think it's on Paramount Plus. I don't even know. It's tough to keep up with all this streaming shit.
Yeah, there's too many.
Yeah, so obviously, this movie kind of came about in the early 80s. It was released in 1983, and it was kind of spearheaded by Steven Spielberg, who obviously, like many people, was a huge fan of the show growing up, so he wanted to do a movie based on the Twilight Zone. So with that being said, what did you think about the movie in general, and especially, I guess, compared to the TV show?
It has its moments. I mean, I find like most of the movie, like 2 of the segments are kind of boring.
Yeah.
Like the one with Anthony and like the cartoon house and stuff, that one's fine. It's not great, but the Sunnyvale one is probably the boringest one with the retirement home.
Yeah.
It just doesn't as it starts off so fire at the beginning too with the Dan Aykroyd and Mel Brooks or whatever his name is. Albert Brooks.
Yep.
Not Mel
Albert Brooks. Yep.
Albert Brooks. That part's awesome, just like the wraparound kind of segment.
Yeah.
And then the first segment's really good, the one with Vic Morrow.
Yep.
And the last segment's obviously
Yep.
the best.
Yep.
But the middle, it's just kind of like, it's just filler, it feels like. And one of those, the Spielberg one, too.
Yeah.
But it's...
So, yeah, the Spielberg one's actually kicked the can in this, and I thought that was, I agree with you, the most boring one. I think the thing that I like, but I also don't like about this movie is that it is much more scary, much more horror-themed than the original show ever was.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Especially in, I think, probably 3 of the 4 segments. I mean, actually, I guess 4 of the 5 segments if you want to count the prologue, which I liked. I don't know that many of the segments capture the original feel of the show. They're definitely updated, and I know a couple, most of the episodes are just remakes of some of the original episodes of The Twilight Zone, especially the last 2. Which is the third segment is a remake of It's a Good Life, which is a classic episode of the show. And then the fourth and final segment, which is just absolutely unbelievable, is a remake of Nightmare at 20,000 Feet. I mean, that is just... We'll get to it, but that's probably... There's some really good ones in here, and there's some ones that don't work as well. But yeah, I like the movie. I hadn't watched it from start to finish in a long time, so I liked it, but I didn't love it as much as I remembered.
Yeah.
Like, I was thinking about, so like the prologue, right? It's cool. You get Dan Aykroyd. You get Albert Brooks. It's meta. Like, they're talking about, do you remember the Twilight Zone? Like, I like that kind of part of it. And then, obviously, there's the big scare at the end with Dan Aykroyd where he kind of turns into some monster. There's really no point to that, though.
No.
It's just kind of like to get you going a little bit, get you on a jump scare at the very end. But yeah, I thought it was a very good movie. I'm glad. I've wanted to talk about this movie for a while, so I'm glad that we are doing it finally. And I know that you and I are probably the best two to talk about this because I know that Kat does not have very much of an interest in the Twilight Zone. Yeah, I know she's not a big fan of the show, and I don't know if she's ever seen the movie before. It's probably one of those things where if she saw it, she'd be like, "Oh yeah, I've seen that. I remember this." But she's not here today, so anyway. So as I mentioned, the Twilight Zone, the movie came out in 1983. Just to give you an idea, some of the other movies that came out this year. Not a whole lot of note here. Probably 2 of the biggest releases. John Carpenter directing the Stephen King adaptation of Christine. Okay. Christine. Cujo also came out in 1983. Let's see what else we got here. Jaws 3D. Oh, terrible movie. That has a young Dennis Quaid, and that's the one where Jaws attacks the aquarium down in Florida. Not
terrible.
Good. Let's see what else we got here. Psycho 2, which came out in 1983, and I think Psycho came out in, 68? So it took them 15 years to make a sequel to Psycho. They brought back Anthony Perkins to reprise the role of Norman Bates. Sleepaway Camp. That's a big movie that came out in 1983 that a lot of people like. Let's see what else. Something Wicked, This Way Comes, which is an adaptation of the famous Ray Bradbury story. Obviously, Twilight Zone, the movie. And then one of David Cronenberg's most wacky movies, Videodrome. You ever seen Videodrome?
I'd like forever ago. I'd have to watch that again.
That's a fucking really, really weird movie. Yeah, so that's what we got for 1983. Not a whole lot of note there, and I think, I guess I I don't really have any particular movie that I mentioned there. It's one of my all-time favorites, so I would think that this movie probably stands out. I mean, Christine's good. Cujo's pretty good. I think this probably stands up there, at the top with some of those other movies. So, I guess kind of to go in the same format as we did last week with this, so we can just run through the segments here. So obviously the first one we kind of mentioned the prologue. There's not a whole lot there, not a lot of meat on the bone, but essentially you get Dan Aykroyd and Albert Brooks driving down a desolate road, and their tape goes out, the radio's out, and they start talking about old TV shows, doing a TV show theme song trivia thing, and they end up talking about the Twilight Zone, which was kind of, as I mentioned, a cool little meta thing that they did. And then all of a sudden, Dan Aykroyd says, you want to see something really scary, and they pull over to the side of the road, and he turns into some sort of weird demon monster thing, and, it's assumed that he kills Albert Brooks' character. And then it cuts to the infamous voiceover. Who does the voiceover in this movie? Because obviously Rod Serling had passed away at the time.
It sounds so... I know the voice. It's definitely the guy with the glasses from the...
Yep.
It's the...
Burgess Meredith.
That's his name.
Yep. So the guy... Time Enough at Last.
My books.
Yep. Oh, my books. Yep. So that one... Yeah, because actually I just looked it up. So Rod Serling had died in 1975. So he was not around to do the voiceover for this movie. Fun fact, he also did not do the voiceovers in the Twilight Zone ride at Disney World. That was done by an impersonator because they wanted to record new audio for that. But they did use archived footage, and the guy actually does sound just like him.
Yeah.
After that, after the prologue there and the famous Twilight Zone introduction, you get the first segment, which is a kind of a partial reworking, but not a full remake of an episode called Equality of Mercy. And I think this is one of the strongest segments in the movie.
This one's the most Twilight Zone out of them, I would think.
Obviously, a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff happened with this one as well. So if you had to give a plot synopsis of this one, how would you describe this? Very uncomfortable segment to watch.
Yeah, there's a lot of racism, and so basically it's about this guy that, it's basically a tale that shows that it's never really as bad as you think it is. It could be way worse.
Yeah.
Because he's just constantly being dropped into these different time periods where, one, he's being hunted down by the Nazis.
Yeah.
The other one, he's in Vietnam. No, is he in Vietnam?
Vietnam.
Yeah, he's in Vietnam.
Then also he's getting hunted by the KKK.
The KKK, yep.
Yep.
And it's basically it's basically shut the fuck up and just be happy with what you have in your life. You're very fortunate.
Yeah, moral of the story is don't be a racist.
Yeah.
You know what I kind of thought about this too, which was funny? Yes, he is definitely a racist piece of shit. He's dropping hard N-bombs and lots of other slurs when he's at the bar with his buddies, kind of blowing off steam because he didn't get promotion and he was passed up on this promotion by a man who is Jewish. Hence the insertion into Nazi occupied France, which is the first segment. But he also is, dropping, like I said, lots of other racial slurs, which is why he's dropped into the racist South, and then he's dropped into Vietnam and being hunted not only by the Viet Cong, but also by American soldiers. Don't you think, bad guy, not a great guy.
Yeah.
Don't you think it would make more sense for one of the Nazi officers or one of the KKK members or a racist American soldier to be dropped into this situation rather than just some guy who happened to drop a couple slurs because he was pissed off?
Maybe it's just going to show that just because you may not be that fanatical, it's still you shouldn't be.
Exactly, yeah. I guess, and a point that Rod Serling made in a lot of episodes of The Twilight Zone, because Twilight Zone was a pretty woke show for the time that it was on back in the day. It was pretty much like any seed of hatred, discrimination, racism can grow into something larger. Yeah. So I think the moral of this story is just,
Well, just so, because he was probably, for that time period, a fairly average person, people were pretty damn racist back in that period of time.
Yeah.
So maybe they were just showing this could just be anybody.
Yeah.
You don't even know.
Well,
because even his friends were just Jews.
Yeah. Hey,
settle down.
Calm down.
Guys yelling racist slurs.
Yeah. It was definitely odd, but I think it's incredibly well done. It's an awesome segment, and obviously it's kind of overshadowed by the tragedy that struck behind the scenes, which I know we talked about on a prior episode. I forget exactly which one, but it's actually covered on, speaking of Shudder, another Shudder exclusive series called Cursed Films. So there is an episode in the Twilight Zone, the movie, that focuses exclusively on this segment. So the main character in this segment, the actor's name was Vic Morrow. If you haven't heard of it, essentially what happened was the Vietnam segment part of that, the Vietnam scenes of that segment. There was supposed to be a scene where he, tries to redeem himself a little bit, and he's trying to rescue a couple of orphaned Vietnamese children, and he's running, and there's a helicopter chasing him. They actually filmed this on a back lot in Hollywood, and the stunt went wrong due to neglect on the part of John Landis, who directed that segment. John Landis also directed American Werewolf in London, Trading Places, Animal House, so he's a pretty famous up-and-coming director. And you watch this show, you get a sense of the arrogance that he has. Totally disregarded all safety protocols just to get his shot. And essentially, Vic Morrow was killed along with 2 child actors who were working illegally at the time that they were killed.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they were. They're not supposed to work after a certain time. It was obviously shot at night. They were being paid cash under the table. The helicopter crashed due to a botched explosion, and Vic Morrow was decapitated by the helicopter.
He didn't do any jail time or anything for this?
He had a civil. He was found. I guess he was brought up on manslaughter charges. I don't know if he was specifically, but some of the crew were. I think they were found ultimately not guilty, but there was a huge civil suit.
Jesus.
Yeah. So Vic Morrow was decapitated by the helicopter, and the 2 children were actually crushed by the wreckage of the helicopter.
Imagine the people there too, like how traumatizing that is.
Well, so if you watch that episode, you get a sense because they interview people that were there,
yeah, Jesus.
And they can barely talk about it because it's such a horrible,
awful,
thing.
Yeah.
And it just, it does not paint a good picture of John Landis, and he really hasn't gone on to do very much since then. It kind of killed his career. Him and Steven Spielberg were very good friends at the time when they made this movie, and Steven Spielberg essentially cut off his friendship with this guy, denounced him. So it was a very big deal. So I feel like you can't really talk about the Twilight Zone movie without really talking about this incident. So, if you want to check out this movie, definitely check out, if you have Shudder, Cursed Films, all the episodes, but specifically the one on the Twilight Zone, the movie. So. After that, we move into, as we mentioned, the most boring segment of the entire movie, right?
I mean, it's definitely a Twilight Zone. Like it fits perfectly with it, but it's
took the words right out of my mouth.
It's just boring.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's a cool idea and a story, but
it's a good message.
That's a better short story to just read.
Yeah.
To make a
Yeah.
Isn't Dick Halloran?
Scatman Crothers is the guy that plays Mr. Bloom.
Yep.
Who is the guy that initiates the game of Kick the Can. But I guess essentially, I don't want to spend too much time on this one because it is far and away the worst of the 4 or 5 segments, whatever you want to call it.
It's like Cocoon, like you were saying.
It very much is like Cocoon, right?
Yeah.
It's a good message. It's kind of sad because it takes place at a retirement home. And it starts off with one of these, an elderly gentleman who you just get the overall sense of sadness. All these people are growing old and they're kind of yearning for their younger days. And I just thought this was probably the saddest story
very sad.
Out of all of them. Because you get that one guy, I forget his name, who his kid, his son and his son's wife come to visit. And obviously
he thinks he's leaving.
He thinks he's leaving, and you can tell he keeps getting strung along by his son. It's just a sad commentary on the state of elderly care. Even this was made in the 80s, and I feel like it's even worse now. And it's just really, really sad to think about. I would never ever want to see my parents in a place like that with no hope and no reason for
you can't take them to live with you. Like, I mean,
I know, it's just so sad, and the music's very sad, but obviously it lifts up from there.
Yeah.
Dick Halloran, Scatman Crothers' character, essentially, what is he supposed to be? Magical or something like that?
He's definitely magical.
So he initiates a game of Kick the Can, and all these elderly people start playing, and then they become young again, and then they're kids. And they realize that, okay, it's great to be young again, but all these things that I loved about my life, I'm not going to get to experience those again. So the moral is essentially never, appreciate your age, but always be young at heart.
Yeah.
Right? So, uplifting, cool story, but definitely feels the most out of place in this movie because I feel like everything else is so much more scary.
Yeah,
and this is very
just,
this
like
is a
you're
palate
waiting for
cleanser.
something to happen, and
Yeah,
like, nothing.
this is very much like a palate cleanser. So, anything you want to say about Kick the Can that I haven't mentioned already?
Nah, it's pretty much definitely the worst segment of them all. Not worst, but no.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it is the worst segment of them.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so from that point, we move on to segment 3, which is, we mentioned before, a remake of It's a Good Life. And this is probably one of the most famous episodes of The Twilight Zone, along with, like, The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street. It's a Good Life is one of the ones that has always stood the test of time. The ventriloquist dummy episode of The Twilight Zone, that's another famous one. But, yeah, so how would you give a plot synopsis of this one?
It's basically like this supernatural kid with powers that it seems like. So none of those people in the house are his real family, except for his sister upstairs,
Right.
is what I'm gathering.
Yep.
And he basically just tricks people to come to his house, and then he pretty much just keeps them trapped there because he has control over everything that's happening, and he can pretty much use his powers for good or evil.
Yep.
Which basically this is, use your powers for good if you have the opportunity.
Yep.
It's cool with like the cartooniness of it, and the guy that plays Uncle Walt, he's awesome. I love that guy.
Good character.
He's in a billion things, and I can't.
Yeah, there's a lot of people in this movie. Actually, I wanted to mention too. So in the Kick the Can segment, the older Jewish guy with the big glasses, he's been in Seinfeld. I forget exactly what episode, but he was in Seinfeld.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good description. So this woman is driving through this town. She stops to get a bite to eat, runs into this kid, and ends up through circumstances having to give him a ride back to his house. And when she gets back to his house, all these weird things start happening, and the family's very, like, oh hey, like stay for dinner, blah blah blah. And you can tell that something is off.
Well, what I find kind of interesting too is can he only use his powers at the house? Because when the bully like pushes him when he's playing the video game, why doesn't he do anything to him?
Yeah,
Like,
I don't know.
that's
a good question.
Something.
That's a good question. I would have thought for sure. So, having rewatched this from start to finish, this one didn't hold up as well as I thought it did. Because I remember this one as a kid being one of the scarier segments.
Yeah, with the rabbit
for
out
two
of the
scenes,
hat.
the rabbit out of the hat, and then like the Tasmanian devil thing that they
and
show.
a little girl getting eaten by the cartoon
by the
monsters.
cartoon. That was really spooky. And then obviously the sister that has
that
the
cartoon
mouth
was
removed.
spooky.
The cartoon was very spooky.
Yeah, I was like,
very
what am I
spooky.
watching?
So yeah, a couple other. So you mentioned Uncle Walt. He's been in a bunch of stuff. So the sister that does not have her mouth removed. Do you know who she is?
No.
So she's Nancy Cartwright. Know who she is?
Nancy Cartwright.
Yeah, she's Bart Simpson on The Simpsons.
Oh, no shit.
Yep.
Huh.
Yeah. So she is the voice of Bart Simpson. So fun little fact there. Also, in addition to that, I know that the actor who played the child in the
Anthony.
No, so not Anthony. The in the original Twilight Zone episode.
Oh, okay.
Actor's name is Billy Mummy, I believe his name is. He is one of the patrons at the diner in the beginning. So he has a little cameo.
Oh, okay.
there.
No
Yeah.
shit.
But yeah, definitely some spooky stuff in here. I feel like aside from those scares, it wasn't as good as I remembered.
No.
But it was decent. It's a good one.
It was well acted. It was well done.
Yeah.
But it just I mean it's a 1983. Like it's tough for this stuff to stand up to the test of time when you've seen so many crazier things.
Yeah.
It's like, but it's still nostalgic. It still makes you feel nostalgic. It's nice.
Yeah, this movie definitely gave me a sense of nostalgia. That's a very good way of putting it. Very good way of putting it. Anything else you want to talk about for that segment before we move on to the king of all segments in this movie?
I feel like it could have gone a little bit further.
Yeah.
It just kind of like, I don't know. It was like it was missing something.
Yeah,
almost.
I feel like good, not great.
Yeah, it was. I feel like a lot of these were good, not great, except for the first two. The first one and the last one are obviously the creme de la creme.
Creme de la creme. All right, that's a great professional segue there, Andrew. So, go ahead, my friend. Talk to me about Nightmare at 20,000 Feet.
So
I know you love this segment. I know you love you some John Lithgow.
I mean, John Lithgow makes this segment.
Oh, he's fantastic.
He is amazing in this. I don't think they could have picked. I don't know who else you would have picked for this. I mean, I'm sure there's guys that could have done this role, but nobody would have been able to do it the way that Lithgow did it. It's just phenomenal.
Yeah.
In every aspect. This one just builds terror throughout it because you can see it, he can see it.
Yeah.
And nobody believes him. They just think he's insane.
Yeah.
Which he is acting completely insane.
Yep.
Like, maybe if you were a little bit calmer about it, but he clearly has a fear of, being in a plane to begin with.
Yep.
Probably shouldn't be flying.
Yeah.
I mean, nowadays, if this happened, this guy would have been, like they took him away to, like, a mental institution at the end, but he would have been, like, arrested.
Yeah, probably gone
They would
to
have
jail.
emergency landed.
Yeah,
which they
well,
basically
he
did.
steals a gun, shoots a hole in a window.
Like, you're in jail
and
for
essentially almost crashes
probably
the
the
plane.
rest of your life.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, so John Lithgow's character, whose name I believe is Valentine.
Valentine, yeah.
He's
a writer, right?
He's a writer. Yeah. He because I remember at one point he is sitting in his seat, and one of the stewardesses is talking to him, and he's holding a textbook about like physics or some sort of math thing. Hate math. She's like, "You really read that stuff?" And he says, "I wrote it." So he's like a genius, but he's a tortured genius because he's terrified of flying. And it's very clear that he is not well, and he starts to see something on the wing of the plane. And you're not sure if he's actually seeing things or if it's something that's real. You get a definitive answer at the end.
At the end,
I would say you get a definitive answer.
Definitive.
But this one, I just think his acting, along with the creature effects.
Yep.
Make it the best segment of the movie.
Oh, yeah.
And also, this is one of the most classic episodes of the original Twilight Zone series. The role that John Lithgow plays in this segment was played by William Shatner in the original one. So if you've seen the original episode of Nightmare at 20,000 Feet, you know Shatner's in it, but you also know that the creature on the wing of the plane looks much, much different. He essentially is a guy in like a fucking teddy bear suit. And this is a much scarier monster.
Oh, yeah, much scarier. But I feel like it doesn't even matter what's on the wing of the plane.
Yeah.
The general circumstances is horrifying enough, because if I was ever on a plane and the weather was like that and that was going on, I would shit my pants.
Yeah. Are you good with flying? Do you get?
I'm fine. I hate taking off. I just want to get up, and then turbulence is fine, because usually when we're up, I'm sleeping. I can fall asleep.
Yep.
It's landing and taking off. Other than that, I'm fine on a plane.
Okay.
Because for some reason, when we're landing, I don't see how it's possible that these three small wheels can maintain this thing that's coming down like
I'm with you. I'm with you. So Kat's the same way, and I feel like if Kat were here right now, this is the part where she would chime in, because she is very much afraid of takeoffs and landings.
I've only encountered bad turbulence a couple times.
Yeah.
But most
I think I only a couple times too. My in-laws one time were flying back from Mexico during the blizzard of '78.
Oh, Jesus.
And I guess they said the turbulence was so bad they actually thought that they were going to die. Like, they thought the plane was going to crash. I guess, like, there was a stewardess, like sitting on the ground, like head in between her knees, like sobbing, like the turbulence was so bad. So yeah, I feel like that would, like, one incident like that can kind of scar you for life.
Yeah, I would say so.
I wonder if something like that happened to our buddy Valentine, John Lithgow. But so I just think, the creature in this is fantastic too. I know we kind of talked about that already, but it's very creepy. There's a fantastic jump scare with the creature, and this ends the movie on an extremely high note. And obviously, the plane eventually does land. It shows Valentine in essentially a straitjacket on a stretcher. He's being wheeled into an ambulance. But then you see the airplane crew goes to the wing of the plane, and the engines are essentially destroyed.
Shredded by, like, long fingernails ripping through with talons. So, and then they just let the guy get taken away instead of being like, oh, maybe this guy isn't
maybe he was right.
Maybe he's right, because this doesn't look like this would just happen. Yeah. Instead, they're like, yeah, go away, bye.
Yeah, because that's the only definitive piece of proof that something did happen, because he does grab the little girl's camera at one point and tries to snap a picture, but that's like one of those instant developing cameras. Yeah. And it just shows the flash of him taking the picture in the window, so you can't see anything there. But, what a great segment. This, I feel like, this makes the movie for me. The other segments are good, are okay to very good. This is the one great segment.
Oh, yeah, this is...
Yeah.
I mean... It could have its own movie. Like, you could make a longer movie.
Oh, I think so too. I'm surprised that this. You've
read the short story before.
I have. So this is actually based on a short story.
Does that take place just on the plane?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. So it literally is almost the exact same story from this. It's written by Richard Matheson, who wrote I Am Legend, Hell House. He did a bunch of original episodes of The Twilight Zone. Very famous author. Kind of a precursor to like Stephen King, contemporary of like Ray Bradbury type thing. I have actually a collection of his short stories. It's very, very good. A lot of horror, sci-fi stuff. So if you like that kind of stuff, check out Richard Matheson. I Am Legend, by the way, the movie was terrible. Will Smith, awesome short story. Awesome. But, and then obviously, so Valentine is in the ambulance, and guess who's driving that ambulance?
Dan Aykroyd is back.
Dan Aykroyd, and he puts on some CCR, and he says, hey, you want to see something really scary? And then it cuts back to Rod Serling's narration. So that's Rod Serling at the end, cut from the original show, and then roll credits, and that is The Twilight Zone, the movie, right there. So yeah, very good movie. Like I said, some things didn't hold up as well as I remembered, but I guess kind of not going off a lot of notes here. Like many anthology movies do, this had a lot of directing talent behind it.
Oh yeah.
So we already mentioned obviously John Landis. We mentioned Steven Spielberg, who directed. So Landis directed the prologue and the first segment, which I believe was titled "The Quality of Mercy." Steven Spielberg directed Kick the Can.
Mm-hmm.
The It's a Good Life segment was directed by Joe Dante, who was coming off of Gremlins and The Howling.
Yep.
And then the last segment was directed by George Miller. He's an Australian director, directed the Mad Max movies. So he was pretty famous as well. So a lot of really big names behind The Twilight Zone, the movie. And obviously, there's a lot of other trivia, a lot of other nods to previous episodes of The Twilight Zone that there's probably too many to name. But the biggest thing here when you talk about this movie is obviously the behind-the-scenes drama and tragedy that happened here, which we already covered. So,
if you haven't seen it, I'd say at least watch it for the last segment.
Oh, for sure. You could probably even just find the last segment on YouTube if you really wanted to. Yeah, because
it's probably only, 20-something minutes
It's
long.
like 20. That's the longest one. I think it's like 25 minutes.
Yeah.
Actually, the last two are longer. It's like 20, 25 minutes, 30 minutes each, something like that.
Because the movie's only like an hour and 40 minutes.
Yes, that's correct. That's correct. So I think it's safe to say we'll do an abbreviated version of categories here. I know Kat loves this, but she's not here today. So safe to say our favorite segment is definitely Nightmare at 20,000 Feet,
easy.
right?
Yeah.
Excellent. And then, nobody... Actually, does anybody really die in this movie?
Yeah. Well...
in the prologue.
The girl that gets eaten in the cartoon.
That's right. Yep.
She dies.
Okay.
Sunnyvale, they all die because they're old at some point.
Would you like to see a Twilight Zone haunted attraction?
Just do the last segment.
You could do a Nightmare at 20,000 Feet haunted attraction. That'd be pretty cool. I think you could.
Yeah, you could do
it'll actually never happen.
No.
But I feel like you could do a pretty good haunted house based on the Twilight Zone, whether it's the original series or
there's
just
plenty
the movie,
of good.
the new series, like whatever you want to do. There's a lot of mythology and lore and stories to draw from there. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
I don't see why not.
All right. You got anything else on the Twilight Zone, the movie, my friend?
Yeah, like you said, it's from watching it the first time you watch it and then watching it again, it's like, I've seen it a billion times in between, like, bits and pieces, but yeah, it's not as awesome as I thought it was before. Yeah. I think all you're really remembering is that final segment with John Lithgow.
Yep.
And then when you watch the other ones, you're like, oh, it's pretty good, but like,
yep.
Without that segment, I would have no use for this movie.
Yeah. First segment's very good.
Good,
and then the third segment is good, and then that one's great.
Yeah, that one really brings it up to
absolutely
a whole other level.
Absolutely. All right, so I think that's probably going to wrap this up. I know this one's a little bit shorter, but again, no cat, lack of internet. Fuck you, Verizon, for many reasons. But also, it's a little bit shorter because we're going to be giving you a second episode this week because we have the release of Scream! So we will be seeing that at some point this week when all of us aren't working, and then I think we'll probably try and record and get that out this week as well. I know Kat is absolutely chomping at the bit to talk about this movie, so I'm sure she will have lots of thoughts on that. And then beyond that, we have a few more movies to cover here in JANthology. I know we have XX, we have Nightmare Cinema, we have Body Bags, right?
Yep.
Those are the last three, I think?
Those are the last three, yeah.
Perfect.
Rolling right along.
All right, my friend. So yeah, this has been actually our 100th episode.
Oh wow, no.
Yeah, triple digits.
Where's the pageantry?
I know. We can do more of a 100th episode celebration for Scream when we have
all three.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
not the same without.
Yeah, not the same without the third wheel here, our amigo Katerina. But yeah, here's where you can find us online if you're looking for more of what we have to say. Our website is ahpod.com. It's AHHPOD.com. You can also find us on YouTube and Facebook. Just search for America's Hometown Horror, and you will find us. You can also tweet at us at Hometown Horror, and you can find us on Instagram, which is where we are the most active. We're at Hometown Horror Pod. You can also email us at hometownhorrorpodcast@gmail.com. And you can find our podcast wherever you're listening right now. We're also on Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Spreaker, and wherever else you may get your podcasts. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of America's Hometown Horror. This is Mike and Andrew without Kat.
Bye, Kat. Where's Kat?
I don't know.
Kat.
Where is she? Where is she?
Was she working or something?
And remember, there is a fifth dimension, beyond which that I don't know the whole segment. But anyway.
Good try. A for effort.
A dimension of sight, a dimension of sound, a dimension of mind. Road stop. The side of the road, up ahead, it says the Twilight Zone. Oh my god, I completely butchered that. Say goodbye to your audience.
Later.
Good evening. Hey everyone, it's Mike from America's Hometown Horror, and just wanted to say thank you again for listening to another episode of our show, because of course, we would be nothing without you listeners. If you are interested in more local Plymouth podcasts, I would highly recommend you check out some shows by our cohorts on the Inebriart Podcast Network. That's right, the Inebriart Podcast Network, folks. In addition to America's Hometown Horror, you can find the Inebriart Podcast, Bar Talk, Theme Park Legends, Retro Redoctopus, and Old Colony Cast. Head on over and give them a listen.